Hey y'all, welcome to Shade in the City. It's your girl Treese here, and I'm back as promised to give you your recap of Beyond the Gate Season 1, Episode 178. This would have been today's episode, Monday. Yes, Monday. So thank you guys for being here with me. And I just want to say for all of you, if I don't get to see you before the holiday, I hope everyone has a very, very happy Thanksgiving. Safe travels to anybody in the air, on the road, on the ship, whatever, on the water, whatever you're doing, however you get there. I just hope you get there safely in one piece and you get to enjoy your time with your loved ones, whatever you're doing. Okay. So yeah, y'all. And I just want to take a moment to, like I said, thank you guys for helping us glow and grow. And I'm just thankful for y'all. Appreciate you. Okay. Never forget that. If you haven't already, please go ahead and hit that like button for all my new viewers. If you are not already and you're liking the vibe, please go ahead and subscribe. Okay. Thanking you in advance. All right. And y'all, let's go ahead and get into this episode and let's get shady.
Lights drip on the skyline paint. Shade in the city, true hits like a banger. I said it, I meant it, no need for disclaimers. Haters right away, but they just false claimers. Concrete beats are heavy like cinder. Looking for one, but the streets feel winter. No filters, no edits, I'm raw with my splendor. My life a movie, they watching the trailer. I'm not gonna hold you. Shade in the city, there's life in the mood. You like and subscribe if you're feeling the vibe. This is my word, I just let you inside. City, I'm not gonna hold you. Shade in the city, my words gon' console you. Like and subscribe if you're feeling the vibe.
All right, y'all. So Danny has returned home from her honeymoon. She's all smiles. She meets up with Anita and Nicole for breakfast down at the country club. And she tells them how, she canceled the photo shoot. And Anita was like, well, why did you do that? And so Danny said, look, because the newlywed Danny made a choice to put her marriage first. And so Bill happens to be walking into the country club and, he's staring at Danny from a distance. And then Tomas rolls up on him because apparently he's there to meet him. And so Bill said, loyalty is very important to me. And so that's why I wanted to talk to you about your future at the firm. And back over at Danny's table, Nicole was like, And so Nicole was like, hold on, I thought you said that you weren't going to let your career take a back seat anymore to your love life. And so Danny says, I just feel different. I feel in charge. And, it was my decision to call it off. And so she's convinced that, other opportunities will come. She said, but I wanted Andre to feel like he came first. And she said, I ain't even gonna hold you. I didn't fall in love with that man. And so of course, Nicole and Anita are very happy to hear her say that, especially when it ain't got nothing to do with Bill. So she said that, she loves Andre because he allows her to be her authentic self, flaws and all. And she talks about how she felt like while she was with Bill, she had to be this perfect trophy wife. And so then Nicole goes off because she has a phone call or something she got to deal with. And so Danny starts to fill Anita in on how Bill called her on bothering her on her honeymoon, but how she ran into this brow guy while she was in LA and told him about Winterfest, and now he wants to come. And so Anita is really excited. So then Anita's like, but don't change the subject. So what about Bill? And so she was like, yeah, Bill called, but I mean, it won't really nothing. And I think we're at a point where we can peacefully coexist. And Anita said, I don't believe Bill would do anything without an agenda. Sorry. So then we get an Chief Daddy sighting. Okay. So Elon is down at the station working on a presentation, and Jacob mentions, how unhappy he is that Leslie is still running the streets of Fairmont Crest after trying to unalive Laura. And so Marcel was like, yeah, you so mad at Leslie, but you're not mad about the incidents that worked out in the Dupree's favor. And so Jacob was like, actually, Marcel, you would know more about those incidents than I would and how they happened. So Elon interrupts because, the two of them about to get into it. And Jacob reminds Marcel. And so Jacob was like, you know what? Your time here is almost up. Don't you want to end your career on a high by, taking down some longtime perps? And Marcel said, boy, don't worry about my legacy. Okay. And he leaves. So Elon is asking Jacob, what has gotten into you? And Jacob said, after seeing Isaiah turn his life around and becoming a do-gooder, I feel like it could be possible for Marcel as well. Elon was like, Isaiah ain't got no desire to be connected to us. And so Jacob was like, well, have you tried to connect with him? And Elon said, that boy know where to find me. And I said, okay, Elon, Chief Daddy, you fine and all, but that's wrong. You're the adult. That is your son. you know he feels away, you should be trying to talk to him. I'm sorry. Y'all can disagree with me in the comments. So then, Elon starts ranting about Isaiah turning down his mother's invitation to Thanksgiving dinner and, you know, offered to take her to lunch instead. That's when we actually learn that Luke does not live in the DMV and he actually works for the Detroit PD, and he's decided to not come home because he picked up the Thanksgiving shift. So Jacob is just hopeful that Isaiah will make an appearance, but Elon said he's too busy with his new life and his new career to spend time with his own damn mama. Jacob was like, well, how about if I call him and just ask him again? Elon was like, no, don't be begging that boy to come spend time with his own damn family. He ain't been home for the holidays since high school. And he tells Jacob, and you shouldn't have to ask him. What I thought was hilarious is then we see Elon say that Isaiah has a bad attitude, and I said in my notes say like he didn't get it rightfully. So Jacob was like, well, look, Dad, I don't think Isaiah would have taken his job at Banneker if he didn't, want to be closer to the family. So Elon goes down this rabbit hole of how Isaiah has always acted out as a way to, he feels embarrass him. And he doesn't understand why, because he feels like he's been a good parent. And I think the difference is you've been a good parent. I don't think you've been a nurturing parent, is the vibe that I'm getting. Jacob was like, well, he was acting out because he was trying to get your attention because he always felt like I was your golden child for whatever reason. And so Elon was like, how dare he? I love all my kids the same. And I gave everybody enough love and attention. And so Jacob said, look, Daddy, no shade, but it was a little tough growing up with your expectations for us. And Elon said, and I don't give a damn. And I'm not going to apologize for being tough. I'm out here trying to raise young Black boys and make sure y'all make it home every day. And I said, well, when a man has points, the man has points. So Ted goes by to see Kat to extend an invitation to have Thanksgiving dinner with him. And so you can see Kat start to get excited at the thought of her dad choosing to spend it with her and not Eva. And that's when Ted bursts her bubble and says that, maybe he was being naive, but he thought he could have dinner with both his daughters. And I said, no, it's not naive, it's stupidity. I said, you don't want me sitting across the table from Eva with a knife in my hand. And I said, okay, Kat. So Kat was like, everybody keeps telling me I'm the one that's selfish, but here you are asking me to negate how I feel so you can get what you want. I said, and Sky talked about this the other day. Shout out to Sky. This has been Kat's downfall. It's because when she comes in and she expresses herself, a lot of the times it does sound like complaining and very immature. And I think that whoever wrote her lines today did a great job of having her express herself in having her communicate in a very mature and very clear way, clear and concise way. So shout out to whoever wrote her lines today. So Ted is like, nah, I'm just trying to make memories with y'all. And Kat said, no, I almost believe you wanted to spend Thanksgiving with me. And I actually thought I mattered again. And so Kat said, I clearly am just going to have to learn to accept that I take second place from now on. And so Ted was like, no, I value all my children. And Kat says, no, you mean all Eva, all the time, until you feel you've made up for time lost. And so Kat said, look, although I cannot change the fact that you've decided to have a relationship with her, I can't stop it. And I realized I don't matter as much as I thought I did to you. And so Ted said, look, I love you and I understand you better than anybody else. And Kat says, well, if you did, you would understand how much this is destroying me. Kat tells him, look, I choose myself rather than subject myself to spending Thanksgiving with Eva. And I said, well, I ain't mad at her. Good girl. Then we see Leslie and Eva there. This is a very short scene, and thank God, because I'm just Leslie out at this point. So Leslie and Eva are uptown discussing their plans to spend Thanksgiving at Orphy Jean's, and Eva is just relishing in the fact that she feels that she's earned Martin and Ted's acceptance, right? So we hop back over to the country club where Tomas tells Bill that, he does plan to stay at the firm for a long time. And so Bill was like, that's good. And, I see a lot of myself in you. And so he thanks him for, covering the cases while he was out with his stroke and Chelsea's kidnapping. He lets Tomas know that, look, I actually plan to take a little more time off work since me and Haley done purchased this property in St. Bart's. So Tomas assures him, look, I got the office covered while you out. Go, have a good time. And so Bill advises Tomas, like, look, as you make your way towards partner, after what happened with Mike, I want all my people to kind of be real family oriented. So Tomas is like, what are you talking about? And so Bill says, what I mean by that is I prefer my partners to be in stable relationships so we can avoid any outside distractions. And he was like, and I know that sounds a little hypocritical coming from me, but I want y'all to learn from my mistakes, not repeat them. And so he was like, it's a big difference between being an associate and a partner. And, clients crave stability. And so Tomas was like, I do not think my personal life will be a distraction in any way. And said, me and Kat, we've been dating for a little while now. And Bill said, yeah. And I heard his had its ups and downs too. And I said, damn, everybody talks in Fairmont Crest. So Tomas just chunks it off to, them being a new couple. And Bill advises him, well, look, you need to be mindful now of how your personal life affects your career. And I said, well, we see Eva, who meets up with Isaiah at the coffee shop. He's asking for an update on Peaches, and she's telling him about, how she's doing these trials. We don't care. Okay. And she just says that, she's worried that whenever Peaches does check up out of here, it's only going to make Leslie more obsessed with Ted. So Isaiah directs the conversation to the kiss that they shared the other day and was like, yeah, I wonder what would have happened had it not been interrupted. And I know we were talking about this on Twitter today, and a lot of people were like, no, and I saw the chemistry, and I think he likes her. I think he likes her enough to, yeah. He's DTF, yeah. And so is she. But I don't think he like her like that. So then they start talking in their subliminals, right? And Isaiah makes it clear he wants to know all of her, if you get what I'm saying. And that's why I said, for somebody who really wants to date you, like get to know you for a first date, yeah, you might have kissed, but he's already thinking about what progresses, what's happening after the kiss. And you ain't even take her on a real date yet. You can't tell me this man isn't just trying to smash. So then they're about to kiss again, and then Ted walks in and interrupts. And so he comes over and introduces himself and kind of, looks Isaiah up and down. And he's like, oh, yeah, you Jacob's brother. And Eva was like, yes, please be nice to him. And so Ted tells her about inviting Kat over for Thanksgiving dinner. And before he could even have a chance to invite Eva, she turns him down and lets him know that she plans to have dinner with her mama. Okay. And that's what I thought was crazy, because then the next scene, we see Eva having flashbacks to Leslie kicking her out on her ass and Ted being the one to show up for her. And so her thoughts are interrupted by Isaiah, who comes back, and she explains, how Ted just invited her for Thanksgiving and she turned him down, and because her mama would crash out otherwise. And so they pick up where they left off, but get interrupted again by Isaiah's phone ringing. And so we know that it's Jacob asking him to come over for Thanksgiving. Isaiah said, nope, I ain't got it to do, but send mama my best and bring me some biscuits. And so Jacob was like, look, if you ain't gonna come to our house, the Hawthorne house, can you please come to dinner with the Duprees? And at this moment, I feel like you could see on Isaiah's face that he does miss his family. Like he misses that connection. And so Isaiah's like, I'll see what I can do. And so then after he gets off the phone and Eva comes back, he tells her that he wants to take her on an official date after the holidays. And then they finally get to have their kiss. And I feel like this. If Isaiah wouldn't have said nothing about that date, Eva wouldn't have either. And she would have still gave up the cooking. I said what I said. Now, he could have Netflix and chilled her, and she would have gave it up. And that's probably giving too much. She probably would have gave it up for less than that. So moving on. So then we see Marcel show up at Uptown, and he is, starting to flirt with Leslie. And so she's recognizing his face, but she can't quite remember where she know him from. And then she was like, oh, you a cop. Mm-mm. And so she explains that, I haven't had much luck with the police in this city, and talks about Jacob. And so then Marcel shares that he and Jacob used to be partners. And, Jacob, he does realize Jacob tends to go after anybody that doesn't meet his standards of doing good. Okay. So then, Leslie's like, okay, so we got a common enemy. So then he was complaining about the holidays or something, wanting to avoid Thanksgiving. So she asked him to open up. And so he starts talking to her about how his wife is threatening divorce, and, he's trying to retire, but he can't retire if he's going to lose half his assets. And he starts telling her about Sheila, his beloved boat. And so then Leslie tells him, well, your wife sounds like a judgmental shrew who pushes her husband away. Reminds me of somebody else I know. And I said, oh, I can't. But Leslie tells him that, you know what, you should just show up with another woman on your arm and, make your wife mad. And Marcel was like, but hold on. When we first started this conversation, you said that you had a doctor or something you was dealing with. Leslie said, it's a situationship, but I'm a free agent. And that's when Ted walks in and sees them talking, and Leslie spots Ted. And so she ends the conversation abruptly with Marcel and goes over to Ted and was like, and Ted was like, you're talking to a cop, right? And so Leslie was like, oh, I'm sorry if I made you jealous. And so Ted said, please understand, frankly, my dear, I do not give a damn. He said, what I'm really here for is I don't want to go back and forth with Eva. And so therefore, is it okay if I come spend Thanksgiving with y'all? And I said, oh, hell. Now, unpopular opinion, I ain't gonna lie to y'all. And Elaine will probably, if you remember the number, Elaine, because this is what she's good at. That's why we keep her on the payroll. Drop what episode that I said I wanted to see these two together. I can't remember. It was in the beginning when we first saw Marcia and, the whole Leslie and arrest and that whole situation. But I remember clearly saying that I wanted to see this connection just so we could get her off of Ted or just get her interested in someone else besides Ted. So I'm not going to say I called it. I'm just going to say they listened to me. I called and they might clearly listen. All right. But yeah, so I am here for, even though I am a little OD'd on Leslie right now, I actually like this. I actually like this. And like I said, it's an unpopular opinion. I actually do like it. And as far as this whole, we talked about it, right? Well, no. So, we talked about it about a month ago or around Halloween where we had our guesses on who we thought was going to be with each other for Thanksgiving. So I think it's funny that now they're basically telling us what all the setups are and what it's going to be. They be listening, y'all. I'm telling you. Kat goes down to the gym to work out her frustration at the country club, and she runs into Nicole. And Nicole was like, damn, why the stank face? What's going on? So Kat fills her in about Ted inviting her and Eva to have Thanksgiving dinner with him. And Nicole was like, well, maybe it's a good idea. And Kat was like, you know what? I can. I can. And Nicole was like, but it might be a step toward making peace. And Kat was like, why am I everyone's afterthought? I said, well said. Well said, Buki. And Nicole said, look, that's not true. But, our family dynamics have changed. And you just got to adjust to that. And so Kat says, you know what? Hopefully the gym can provide more comfort than my family at this point. Because y'all ain't giving none of that. And can I just say, I've seen a couple people comment about it on Twitter. And I'm not saying you're wrong by any means. But a lot of people were like, how dare Kat expect Ted to choose between his daughters, but she doesn't want to choose between her parents. And I do agree, both I'm sure are equally hard. However, I've been in that situation where my parents have been older and I didn't think it was going to be a big deal. And now this is just me sharing some personal side stuff. And I didn't think it was going to be a big deal until I had to choose. And I was like in my 20s. And the way I broke down, I think I was probably around whatever Kat's age is supposed to be. And the way that I broke down, it's the worst feeling in the world. So I'm not saying that it doesn't hurt for Ted, but especially since he just met Eva, I'm sure it doesn't compare to having to choose between your parents. That's just my thoughts. Y'all disagree. Y'all can disagree with me in the comments. But anyway. So Nicole goes back to the table with Danny and Anita and tells them about Kat being upset about Ted's Thanksgiving invitation. And so Danny was like, yeah, Kat has every right to be upset. And she was like, Eva clearly over here trying to fill in, take her place. She taking a page out of Looney Leslie's playbook. Nicole does what she does best. And no, she's not. Eva's a good girl. Okay, I'm sorry. That upset me. So no, she said Eva is a sweet girl who wants to build a relationship with her daddy. And Danny was like, even if it devastates Kat. And so Nicole was like, look, Kat just needs to adjust. And Anita chimes in with the advice that her mama gave her and tells them that, look, despite the flaws that some of their men have had, they tend to be excellent fathers. And I said, where? Where, Anita? Bill, who was always at work and admitted that he was never around? Ted, who completely forgot about his other kids when he found out about his illegitimate one? Okay. Bill comes over and he's like, yeah, Daddy, we didn't get a chance to talk about Winterfest. And she's like, Bill, don't say Winterfest again. Let me come to you, okay? So he's just happy that she didn't give his MCing duties to Andre and, whatever. And so he brings up the honeymoon, and Danny talks about how happy she is to be married to Andre. And you could just see that this is killing Bill softly. And you can see Bill is just, I literally said on Twitter, we needed a wall for Bill to slide down because that's how much he looked like he was dying inside. All right. So then Tomas runs into Kat, and he notices, something's going on with her. So she fills him in about the whole Thanksgiving debacle and, how she doesn't want to choose between her parents. So, of course, after this conversation with Bill, Tomas comes up with the idea that, why don't they go down, get a place in Chesapeake, I believe it was Chesapeake Beach, which is a nice area. And, they could spend Thanksgiving together. And so, of course, this makes Kat happy and she accepts. And I said, this was not on my Thanksgiving bingo card for Beyond the Gates. Never did I see Kat and Tomas spending it together. And that was episode 178 of Beyond the Gates. I hope y'all enjoyed the recap. Please go ahead and do me a favor. If you haven't already, make sure you hit the like button. Make sure that you guys comment. Make sure you subscribe and make sure you hit the notification bell. Make sure you're following me on all the platforms. It's the TikTok, the Twitter, the Facebook, the IG, the Blue Sky, and the Lemonade, y'all. And so to all my Beyond the Gates crew, I just want to give a super, super big thank you, guys. One, for helping grow the channel like you have. But also a lot of y'all that have been with me since I started these recaps know that this was kind of a passion project for me because me and my grandmother used to watch soaps together. That's how I got into the soap world. And I miss her every day. That I can't call. Sorry, I didn't mean to get choked up, but that I can't call and talk to her about Beyond the Gates. So I just want to thank y'all I'm sorry. I did not expect this to happen. But I just want to thank y'all for allowing me to get this out and do this with y'all every day and every week and let y'all know that I love y'all so very much. So thank you. Everybody have a safe holiday. And happy Thanksgiving. Love y'all. And don't judge me. I'm sorry. It's the emotional Pisces in me. Love y'all. Good night.